Everybody, this is another episode of the Peterson's Farms podcast. I have a couple of very special guests today. Special in the right kind of way. They do the stuff in the industry that I look up to, that I learn from, and I hope you guys and gals learn something as well. Dan and Becky, I might let y'all introduce yourselves for the guests or the listeners, and then we'll just jump into talking about all those things, country natural beef and your careers, really, because those are the interesting things. Those are the pieces of the puzzle that's going to give everybody a chance to see something they may not have a chance to see otherwise. Dan, why don't you, actually, let's go with ladies first. Becky?
Okay, well, good morning. Yeah, I am a manager for Country Natural Beef. And so basically work on the operation side of things. So think harvest to customer. So that's kind of my day-to-day. And we've got a pretty awesome team that I work with, and Dan's included in that. Dan's my boss. So yeah, we kind of make it happen with the co-op, with our amazing co-op of 100 ranchers, and getting their cattle to market in a box. So.
Wow. Thank you. And everybody, we'll put some links to Becky's LinkedIn, Dan's LinkedIn, just the website for Country Natural Beef. That stuff will be in the show notes, so you can go kind of check them out outside of this conversation as well. Dan, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you managed to be on this I guess I was going to say phone call, but it's really a podcast, a Zoom conference.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thanks for the invitation, Neil. So I'm Dan Probert, a rancher in Northeast Oregon, which is kind of mountainous country. We have a cow-calf operation here and a couple other locations in the state of Oregon and Nevada and Washington. And unique to Country Natural Beef, there's 4 managers, what we call internal partners. And so all of the lead management also are ranchers that came up kind of through the ranks in Country Natural Beef. So I started with the co-op in 1996, started putting cattle through the program, held different jobs in that time frame, was more on the live cattle side, on the live cattle production side, and then moved to what we call marketing, but really Becky described it better. It's really an inventory management job, basically from the time the animal unloads at the processing facility on out through the consumer. And so that's my current role. I've been in that for 2.5 years, but really have gotten to be a part of this great growth in Country Natural Beef that went. So in 1996, when I started, we were processing about 4,000 head a year, and now that number's just a little shy of 70,000 head a year. So it's been quite a ride in my time with CNB.
Yes, that is the story. That is the thing that I think will have a lot of value for the listeners, right? And Dan, I think, well, both of you really, it's kind of cool for people to hear, hey, this guy raises cattle, right? I mean, you've came up with this company, with this brand throughout the years. And then we start talking about Becky's story a little bit. She came from kind of the other side of the desk at one time over at Whole Foods. So she really understands the needs of retailers and how those retailers fulfill the consumer's desires and the things they're wanting. Oh, there's just a million topics. So maybe let's start with humane treatment of the animals. How do you guys deal with that topic, and how do you think about that? What's your philosophy? And I don't care, maybe both of you want to chime in, or if there's a better one for that question, somebody just tell us.
Yeah, it kind of fits with both of us, and Becky can fill in too. I know. So Country Natural Beef, even before there was a program called Global Animal Partnership, was doing exploratory work, and I think at that time it was called the Animal Compassion Foundation. Becky will correct me if I have the name wrong, but we started working with them, got the folks out on a number of ranches, and then as the GAP standards, the Global Animal Partnership animal welfare standards, were developed, then I was on the GAP board for I think 10 years, and part of that time Becky was executive director. I believe it was really a grassroots effort that John Mackey championed when he was leading Whole Foods. Whole Foods really pushed it. They took a really unique approach in that they brought animal welfare groups and production groups like Country Natural Beef and Nyman Ranch on the pork side, for instance, and many other groups, brought them all to the table to put a standard together with very divergent, almost contentious groups. And the standards were not perfect. They've went through a number of iterations and continue to go through changes. But really, that is our main arm's length third party verification system is GAP, and we continue to use that. I would say we're probably, and Becky will know this better than me, we're probably 70 to 75% GAP step 4, which means the animals are never confined to a CAFO facility. We have some that are, but still meet over 100 welfare standards in the GAP system.
Well, that's one of the things I love about GAP. I think without GAP, it made it really hard for somebody to really even take the first step towards changing how they operate and moving to maybe a more desirable system, right? Because it's hard a lot of times for anybody. It's hard for me as a rancher or a guy that's thinking about changing things, trying to do it better, to just go from what I did to something different. And if that is a big jump, man, that's a hard thing to do. But with GAP, you have some steps. You can work your way up the ladder, I like to say. For everybody that's not familiar with GAP, Global Animal Partnership, Dan, like, we have a chance right here. And I want to needle on how you built that and how, even with John leading it, you guys were, and guy and gal, I keep saying guys, and I'm thinking, oh man, that's not very fair to Becky. But anyways, and just integral in bringing those groups together. And you mentioned contention. Is there a fun story to tell around that? I mean, was there some times when you're trying to talk about space requirements in the pork side of the business or feedlots in the beef side of the business? Or I'm sure there's some chicken and turkey considerations.
There were, and it was closer to the end of my tenure on the GAP board. Becky, I think, was involved in those early years before there actually was an official program. Maybe knows a little bit more of the contentious stories, but yeah, there. If you can imagine, you have one group, our group, that's involved in production. You have another group that really their mission has been to end production, right? And so finding middle ground is really difficult. And the things that come to mind where we spent a lot of time, and everybody was respectful. I mean, there was opposition.
Oh, come on. There was some arm wrestling, and I mean, there had to have been. I'm just picturing it.
It didn't hit the minutes though.
that was at the bar afterwards, right?
It was, but you get the contentious things where, if you can imagine, transport, right? We all have to use some type of transport, or most all of us do, to get animals to processing facilities. And so we spent hours on transport. We a lot of the practices back on the ranch, how we use, let's say, a hot shot or an electric prod, how we use dogs, how we use a rope. We all here at least brand our calves kind of the way we've done for 100 years, and getting those things ironed out definitely were contentious at times, but we got there. I mean, and I think both groups had to meet in the middle, and I think most importantly, it forced producers like me to look at our practices and really evaluate what we were doing and ask ourselves, can we do things better? Could we design a lead up or a squeeze chute or a bud box or a tub better, where we didn't have to use a prod as much? It's natural. Just the term natural made us better producers. If you can't reach for a bottle of Tylenol or liquamycin, you learn how to take stress off of animals. And so all these steps, I think, have made us better producers.
It's a great illustration. I wish we could do that in our country, right? Get total opposite views at the table and leave happy. And, I mean, I'm sure, there's some tough debate, tough conversation, but at the end of the day, progress was made. And man, I think it's just a good illustration for anybody and everybody out there trying to help govern our country. All right, Becky. So I am curious. You've just been involved with this from so many angles and in so many ways. Tell us a story about somebody that was really opposed to animal agriculture, who then came and saw what it really is, and how that affected their perspective. Have you got one of those?
Somebody.
It doesn't have to be a specific person, but in general.
We actually had a couple of people on the GAP board that were, like Dan said, they're animal activists, right? So you're really meeting at the table with someone who does not want meat on the table. And so it's like you said, and kind of getting minds together and kind of like, okay, come out with a solution. But there were times when I would say that it did get very contentious, and that I think it was kind of like, sometimes it was just like you were almost talking, and it was almost like you're trying to rationalize with someone where it's not rational to them.
Right. Yeah, that's what I say a lot is our opinions come from our experiences. And I feel like a lot of times in those relationships, my experience is so vastly different than theirs, and vice versa. It's really hard. It's why I try to say, well, just come to the ranch, just come out here and ride around with me a little bit, and let's talk while we're in that environment. And I have to be kind of willing to do the same with them, right? It's not only come to the ranch. Well, let me come to your direction some and understand that perspective.
Totally. Yeah. I think, there were some people, I think, on our GAP board that I didn't, and I know, Dan, you could back me up on this, that I really didn't think would, they were involved in a lot of protests. They were, and, very involved in animal activism. And we actually did get to a place where we came out, where standards came out, where there was a meeting of the minds, where maybe everyone wasn't super happy, to be honest. Maybe Dan was a little like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this at my ranch? But and then the animal, activists are kind of like, I can't believe we just agreed to that.
Well,
But
right. We didn't cancel it. They are, I think, and that's cool too. Everybody still has their position they began with. Everybody made some concessions. There's some middle ground found, but I don't think somebody who wants to end animal agriculture now all of a sudden doesn't want to end that, but they've made some moves to the middle. Animal agriculture's made some moves to the middle, which turns out to be the big majority of humans getting a better deal. And I just think that's such a win. And the animals get a better deal.
For sure. Yeah.
All right. So where did the name? Okay. So this is just how it works. I jump now to a new topic. Where did the name Country Natural Beef come from? What's that story?
Yeah. The short answer is I'm not exactly sure, other than it was the name they picked in 1986. And there was, so just a little bit about the history. There was 14 original ranches, and they started in 86, and essentially a number of them were going broke. And I'm barely old enough to remember. I was just graduating high school then, but that was the time in the Pacific Northwest where CNB started. That was the time of the spotted owl. That was a time of the farm crisis, where interest rates were hitting in the 20-21%.
Well, time out. What's the spotted owl? Yeah. Oh, maybe you're going to go ahead.
Oh, yeah. You Texicans don't know about spotted owls. So spotted owl was listed as an endangered species, and really closed a number of national forests, which public lands forests really feed the mills in these very small towns that I grew up in. So spotted owl was a way to stop timber harvest. And this little town, this community that I'm in, I think when I graduated in 82, there were 4 mills operating, and within a few years they were all closed. And so all those jobs left. All of us that graduated left. All my classmates left, because there weren't, again, there were just as bad things happening on the farm side and the ranch side with high interest rates. And so that Country Natural Beef was born in that era. And they really decided that the only way they could survive this was to capture more. So they started with 3 head a week. And the other interesting thing about that group is I think all of them were involved in holistic resource management at the time. And I think a lot of them met at a short course that Alan Savory put on. And so land ethic was a cornerstone. And then just the need to survive was another part. If you think of that, it was a little bit farther down the road, but you probably will remember this when, maybe you're too young, but cattle free in 93, that was a slogan on getting cattle off public lands, ranches. And most of our ranchers do have some public lands. So all of those things pushed for the organization. The name, I'm not answering your question well, because I know the name was started with the start of the group, and it's probably important to recognize we have 2 lines, we have 2 brands. We have Country Natural Beef. Most of that goes to Whole Foods as more of a national brand. And then Oregon Country Beef is a brand we use here in the Pacific Northwest, has slightly different attributes, has a non-GMO attribute, and it makes a call out, more of a local call out for the Pacific Northwest.
Sure. Now, do you guys supply Whole Foods nationwide, or is it regional? I'm just wondering, the listeners, if they want to know if they're eating Country Natural Beef, and let's say Whole Foods is a pretty good example of maybe you can't tell what's in the meat case if that's Country Natural or not. So I'm just curious, how could we paint that picture? Is it national?
Well, yeah, we're considered a national brand. You can find us in Pacific Northwest, NorCal, SoPac, Southwest, Rocky Mountain, and the South.
Wow. Well, that's a lot of them. There's only about 3 or 4 more regions outside of those. That you guys cover up a big piece of the country as far as Whole Foods is concerned. So if you're a shopper in, basically from Florida all the way to California and then up to Washington, and then just cut a little diagonal line from Washington down to Florida, that's where you can find this beef. Now, are you guys all grass fed?
Oh, we're not.
No. So we're grain fed. Our rancher base is a cow calf base, but we do finish these cattle on grain.
Now, are you nervous about saying that? I mean, it's just a question I ask because I think people are interested. You hear grass fed, it's a big buzzword. We do grass fed, we do organic. But I personally like it all. I like it all.
Yeah. I'm involved in a small grass-fed program. I like dipping my toe in that personally, but the reality is that 85% of the meat case is grain-fed, and so it's a niche for us. It's where we started. We continue to try and do things to make it. We don't try and hide it. We want to talk about a quality eating experience and grain finish, but we also address the animal welfare side through the Global Animal Partnership Standards. These are a step 4, which means they're never confined to a feedlot, but they're still fed a grain ration, but they have access to pasture that entire time. So
isn't that whole topic hard? It's just crazy to say, well, some grass fed and finished cattle are actually done in a feedlot, so it's really such a big, broad understanding that needs to be passed along somehow, and you really can't even do it in a 30-minute podcast. I think it's just, we want to paint the picture. I brought it up so you guys just have a chance to honestly answer, oh no, we grain finish our cattle, or we feed them this way. I think people also, consumers, just want that transparency. Like, hey, okay, cool, I answered the question. That's how you do it. Now I know. Now I can choose to buy your product or not. It's partly why I think it's so important to bring peers in the industry onto this platform. So, hey, you might not buy Peterson's. You might rather have beef than pork, or, and hey, these are some guys I trust and have known for a lot of years and think are certainly reputable. Anyways, I rambled a little bit, got up on my soapbox about grass-fed, but I think it's kind of important to just let everybody know. You need to do a lot of research into grass-fed, grass-finish, grain-finished, those things to really understand the truth in what you're eating.
Well, sorry, but if I can add to that, I think you had a valid point a couple of seconds ago where you said even grass-fed can be in a feedlot. So it's kind of not even just about the finishing. It's really almost about the how they're being raised. You know what I mean? Because I think people just think grass-fed is synonymous with pasture, and that's just not true.
Well, okay, so let's add another layer. What about organic? Right? Does organic dictate humane treatment? Not that I've ever seen, right? But if you hear that word as a consumer, you assume a lot of things. And I think it's upon us and our peers and everybody that's out here trying to do this thing the best we know how to address some of that, to talk about it, and then to say, okay, look, if somebody's assuming the word organic means humane treatment as well, we probably need to layer that in to the truth of the word and how things, the whole labeling, the government's in charge of the labeling and what you can say and how you have to say it.
The exciting thing, when I think about organic, and we are not organic, probably would even have a bias against being organic. Organic's a tool, right? It's an attribute you can call out. The exciting thing that we're seeing going on nationally and globally is this whole movement around regenerative ag. And so it's taking the focus off the specific tool. So organic says you won't use anything synthetic. And regenerative is taking the conversation broader and saying this is about soil health, it's about environmental health, it's about the health of the animal, and it's about the health of the people that are taking care of them. So the economics enter into it, the welfare of the folks that are on these ranches and farms are taken into account, and the health of the landscape. I've seen some organic more on the farm side. Spent quite a lot of time in the Salinas Valley. There's a need for organic, but there's usually in those models, there's a tremendous amount of tillage that happens in the absence of, let's say, an herbicide. And there's trade-offs in everything, but this broader look at regenerative, and the way that it's taking off, our counterparts, Becky and I's counterparts, were at the NCBA convention a couple weeks ago. They came back and said 70% of the conversations there are around sustainability and regen, and it's sweeping our part of the industry.
Yeah. Well, and for the listeners, go Google regenerative agriculture, Google the Savory Institute, Google country natural beef. These are the places you're going to get to learn about this kind of stuff. And I do that. Like, I'm a leader in a business that has been doing this for 20 years, and I still need to get educated. We say it a lot of times. We're doing it the very best we know how to do it today, but I don't think that's the best it will ever be done, right? I mean, it's just can get always a little better from our perspective, and then we have to, layer in those perspectives of other people.
Totally agree. What you said, and it's probably been 25 years ago, I heard Alan Savory make the comment that you can never step in the same river twice. And that's the way this regenerative thing is today. It's moving and changing, and nobody's really got it dialed in as to how to even define it. The objectives are there, which is continuous improvement, but how we measure that is going to be a conversation for a long, long time.
Yeah, that's right. What's it like wrangling? How many farmers and ranchers did you say were in the program? 100. All right. Yeah. So
yeah.
I've been around a few, not anywhere near 100. And that's got to be a pretty good task.
It is.
And that's not throwing any of them under the bus. I just got to thinking, well, ask them this question. They're got to be saying, well, look, I can't talk about, but I think even farmers and ranchers know they're hard to handle. They're opinionated. They've built a thing up out of the dirt. They have to dream up solutions. And a lot of times those personalities are a little bit harder to convince. Oh, let's all conform to this set of standards.
Yeah. And I'm gonna let Becky talk a little bit about playing that role. I'll set the stage, Becky, and then you should fill in. But Becky and Norm works for Becky, talk about this middle space where really you're doing a dual fiduciary role between the retailer and the rancher. I'm more focused on the rancher side. And so to address what you said, I mean, essentially when we get together, and we do that once a year, we've had to do it virtually for the last two, but traditionally we would have 100, 200 people, right? If you think of couples and then their kids, we might have 300 people in a room. And essentially, when you're talking about 100 ranches, you're talking about 100 CEOs, right? They make their decisions every day on their own, and they aren't used to doing someone else's bidding. So this role that Becky and I play really is more of a carrot than a stick. And the flip side of that is, if you think about 100 CEOs in the room, think of the horsepower there. Think of the ability to collectively address an issue, and it's a wonderful, powerful thing that I've been able to be a part of. But Becky, you should talk about how you have to dance this dance between making a retailer and a rancher both happy.
Well, and she's so uniquely suited for that, position. It's just her career. Anyways, Becky, go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, it's challenging. It's challenging. I think, it's challenging, but it kind of goes back to almost like what we were saying about GAP too. It's just kind of that it's almost, there's a push from the ranchers, and there's a push from the retailers, and they don't always match up. So we're kind of in the middle of, okay, how can we, so, for example, with all of the cost increases that ranchers are seeing, I mean, Neil, you're a rancher, with, feed costs and transportation costs, everything, labor, everything is costing more. The ranchers, we're based on our co-op is based on a cost of production model. So the ranchers kind of tell us, this is what I need to be sustainable. And then we try to hit that for that pricing wise for them with our retailers and food service customers so that they are sustainable. Well, sometimes it just doesn't, it just doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? Sometimes what the ranchers want, and maybe, and when I say they want, it's valid, right? They're filling out Excel spreadsheets, they're putting their costs in there of maybe, all these things, what they need. But the market might be saying, when I say the market, I mean the retail market or the food service market, or how we can price those cuts to move might be sitting in a different place. So,
yeah. And that gets dictated by consumers, right? Voting with their dollars at those retailers, at those restaurants. And I've never met one person yet that wasn't nervous about raising prices, because you get scared the consumer will go elsewhere or stop. They might just trade from beef to chicken or something. It's a really dynamic, and I think it's cool that the consumers have the control. That's where the control needs to be. But it doesn't remove the fear and angst. And it made me think, well, okay, this cost of production model, how do you keep them from lying? How do you keep a rancher from just saying? There has to be trust. Like, ultimately, consumers have to trust Peterson's. They have to trust Country Natural. They have to trust the other guy, whoever it is. I wonder, do you guys worry about that? Has anybody ever fudged their cost of production?
I don't know about fudge. I think maybe they believed it. But the rest of us were sitting there thinking, we're all doing the same practices and we're doing it for less. So how we address that specifically, and there's been a number of iterations in my history as to how this cost of production model, how we arrived at the number. And I think we've actually hit on the best one is we kind of do it collectively as a group. We have a form, and we can put it up on the wall, we can put it on a Zoom screen, and we just go through it, labor, cost of hay, for instance, cost of feed. And then when we get done, we just throw out maybe the 10 highest and the 10 lowest. And whether that's because there was an error in the math, or whether, I'll tell you what happens a lot of times. So our rancher base would consist of ranches that maybe have anywhere from 5,000 cows down to a ranch that might have 150. And economies of scale are just different for that ranch that's at 150. And so sometimes those ranchers, because they can't spread labor out over as many animals, they'll come in high. And so how we address that is just throw out the tops and the bottoms and come to the middle. And then I think this is really exciting. My rancher friends in CMB may not agree with me, but we took that number and then we said, okay, but let's challenge ourselves to reduce that by 5%. So we took the cost of production number and then we took it times 95% to challenge ourselves to find cost-cutting measures that then are passed on to our consumers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was just thinking, in my family, the numbers like were almost locked up in the vault and secret. I mean, it's just a thought process everybody has to get comfortable with, and saying, sometimes you don't want to share how you're doing it, because then everybody might find that little secret out. And so it has to be a co-op where we're all like, yay, you have something, share it now. Right now we're all getting a better deal or able to do something in a better way. Some of those constructs from just years of kind of trying to do it better than the next guy have to be broke down.
It's a powerful tool, and I'm thinking some of your listeners, and maybe you have been involved with Ranching for Profit, and Ranching for Profit has a group called Executive Link. I mean, that's really what CMB does when they're transparent with these numbers, rancher to rancher. It's like, how are you finding hay for $200 a ton and I'm paying $2.25? Or how are you able to spread management over 400 cows where we've got a man per 200 cows? I mean, it's a great sharing tool internally.
Yeah, it just comes to my mind that's got to be so valuable. It almost makes me want to come be in your co-op. Like, dang, how can I be in there? Because I think I could learn so much. All right, so jumping topics again, or really kind of trying to wrap it up, because I think we could probably talk for another hour. There's just a lot of cool stuff y'all are up to. But Becky, you first. How much country natural beef do y'all eat at your house?
Oh, goodness.
Well, I know you got a growing young fella in there that probably can handle a lot of food.
We do. Yeah, we do. Well, so we have this one ground beef that we came up with. It's our butcher. We call it our butcher's blend. And it's a brisket, short rib, and chuck blend. And that's kind of a staple in our house. So we've got quite the little padding of that. So that's,
Right. Well, we haven't even touched on your meat cutting background and knowledge. I mean, you're just talking about briskets and short ribs and chucks, and gosh, we could talk about that for another hour. Like how you come up with that blend and the robust flavor that it really does offer. So we won't do that, but thanks for sharing. That's Becky's favorite, the ground beef. Dan, all right, what about you and your household?
Yeah. Well, so I'm wondering if you and I might have similar stories. So when I was growing up, and I mean, things were tough, and we ate the mistakes we raised at home, right? So if you had one that was off color that wouldn't bring as much at the sale yard, or maybe you had one born with a deformed leg or something, that was what we ate, along with a lot of elk and deer. But now, I eat a lot of country natural beef, and Becky's the best thing that ever happened to me, because we run these test runs, for instance. So whether it's a packaging test run, which we've done with our case ready system, or getting our direct consumer up to speed, and you run these test runs, and then you can't sell it at retail. So my freezer is full of flank ribs. That's my favorite. But then I've got a lifetime supply. Well, no, not a lifetime, but I've got a year's supply of middle meats, ribeyes, New York sirloins, I do okay. I do okay, and I'm glad I don't have to eat the mistakes anymore. So
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, that is you're telling a true story for anybody that was raised in a ranching family that was just trying to make ends meet. And hey, we know we got to feed these kids and ourselves, and that calf or cow is not going to be marketable. All right, so that's the one for the family. I mean, it really was just that way. Wow, it's been a fun conversation. It's been a great conversation. I hope people have now got an insight into Country Natural Beef and what you guys and gals stand for and what you find important, and learned a little bit about the people behind it. And now go Google Country Natural Beef, check them out. I know you guys sell a product online. You're also selling it in store. Well, I say I know you sell it online. I guess I should make sure. Where could people buy it if they want to do you do any direct to consumer business?
We do, yeah. countrynaturalbeef.com.
There you go. We'll put it in the show notes. Dan, Becky, thank you so much for your time. Have we left off any topic or just parting statement you'd like to make sure the listeners get to hear?
First of all, I just appreciate the opportunity to tell the story. I devoted over 30 years of my life to Country Natural Beef, and I think it's such a tremendous business and model and opportunity for grassroots ranchers to have a say and a voice and a control in a company all the way to the retail meat case. The last thing I put out is we're growing. We've got some growth goals in the next couple of years, and we're looking for ranchers. Kind of needs to be, Western based. I mean, just to make the logistics work. But we are looking for ranchers, and we would enjoy having ranchers join our group.
Yep, I'd say if you should check them out, get to know them. I'm telling you, if my ranch or my property was just a little further west and north, I'd be doing that for sure. And we've even explored trying to figure it out, how we could maybe even be a part of the program from Texas. Becky, you have anything?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Neil, and thank you to your listeners. This has been really fun. I just would leave with that beef tastes better when it's raised right. And so, so I think, consumers can kind of taste our beef, and they can taste the difference that our co-op members take in raising the cattle that ends up in a box in their grocery store or at food service restaurants.
That's the gospel, folks. Take it to the bank. It really is. Go enjoy some Country Natural Beef. Time out, because you said something I didn't know, and I can't leave without understanding it. What is a flanking rib?
Oh, yeah. Becky, you describe it. I know what it tastes like, and I like it.
It's just a thin cut. You might see them called it's just across the ribs, and so usually the short rib is individually like. So if instead of cutting the short ribs individually, you just put them on a saw and you cut them nice and thin on a saw, and so it's also called like a Korean style short rib. So if you go to an Asian restaurant, you'll see those and they'll be marinated, but they are really good because normally that's a long cooking cut, and when you have them flanken style, you can just put them on the grill or the barbecue and go to town.
Awesome. See, I learned something. This is a selfish thing I do in a lot of ways, because I love you guys and talking to you, and it gives me a good excuse to record it and have it, for other people to learn from. But I learn, like, right there. I've been doing this thing for 20 years or something, and I don't know what a flanking rib is. Now I do. So it really is. It's worth the listen, and it's worth the time, and I appreciate y'all so much. Peterson Natural Farms family, all you PNFers out there, go check out Country Natural Beef and come back and listen to the next conversation, because I guarantee there'll be fun stuff in there for you as well. We got to know where our food comes from.
Thanks, Neil.
There you go. You bet. Thank y'all. Thanks for the time. Thanks for kind of doing it short notice. This will probably publish next week. So we'll be getting it out there quickly.
Great.
Thanks, Neil.
Great.
Holler if you need something. Thank you again.